Hello and welcome into a very special edition of, I guess, Rapid Recap, a reaction to a big-time recruit. I am Greg Smith, the senior recruiting analyst here at Inside Nebraska, and I'm joined by Steve Marik, our football extraordinaire here at Inside Nebraska. And Steve, we've got a big one to talk about. Dylan Raiola, the number one quarterback, 5-star out of Buford, Georgia, Buford High School in Georgia, has flipped to Nebraska from Georgia, previously committed to Ohio State. Everyone knows in the world, everyone in the world that follows Nebraska football knows that he is a huge deal. Anytime you land a 5-star quarterback, anytime you flip a player, period, from Georgia, that becomes a big deal. So there's a lot to dive into and a lot of things that we can kind of break down and dissect. But Steve, I want to start here with you. What was your initial reaction when we first started to, I guess, Monday, get wind of this being something that was even a possibility?
Complete and utter shock. I was not expecting Dylan Raiola to ever enter my life at all since he committed to Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs back in, I think it was May, right? May 15.
Yep.
He had left my mind. He had left my memory. I was just completely off of him and just, going on with my life without Dylan Raiola in it. But now he is back and he is in my life yet again. And it's a complete and utter shock. That Monday night was so wild to watch unfold online on X and on everywhere. Just like Husker Twitter. Sorry, I'm calling it Twitter. Husker Twitter just completely melted on Monday night with the news that he had set an official visit and he was going to be in Lincoln the next weekend. So I don't know. This is just, absolutely crazy. Like you always tell me, Greg, recruiting never stops. Matt Rule obviously never stopped the fight to go get Dylan Raiola and bring him home to Lincoln, Nebraska. And, it compelled me so much that wild Friday night that I had to write a column on it. And so I wrote one for Inside Nebraska, but it was shock. I did not expect Matt Rule to pull off this magic trick that he certainly did. And it was a magic trick. I mean, this is crazy.
Yeah, it's absolutely nuts. And I think that it's something that, thinking about this, and you and I have kind of talked about this off pod, because it's such a big deal. Not just for Nebraska, and it is a huge deal for Nebraska, obviously, but nationally, it's such a big deal that we were trying to compare it to another flip. And the first one that really kind of comes to mind of the scope of this really was a couple of years ago, the Travis Hunter one, when Travis Hunter flipped from Florida State to Colorado on signing day, decided to go with prime time. That started kind of a movement. Like, that's what this is. This is what this feels like. And in a lot of ways, in some ways, it's bigger than that because you're talking about a quarterback. Now, we know Travis Hunter is awesome and he's a great two-way player and all of that. But like whenever you're talking about quarterbacks, it becomes an even bigger deal. And I want to go back to something you said at the Matt Rule magic trick, because I think that's a really good place to go next, which is in order to pull this off, Matt Rule had to do something that I think is not probably been talked about enough kind of in the lead up to all of this, because there's been this huge build up to this happening. It wasn't a huge secret, but it's still a huge deal. He had to do it. It had nothing to do with playing time or NIL or even the family ties that Dylan has, in my opinion. It had to do with trust. One of the things that we talked about throughout this season with Matt Rule and his first year here at Nebraska is just how it felt like you could trust Matt Rule. When he goes up to the podium, it felt like he was being genuine and authentic. It felt like the messages he was giving us were the same messages he gave his coaching staff, the same messages they all gave the players, right? And that's something that I've heard in recruiting about him, is that he's been genuine and he is really honest and upfront. And I think that obviously Dylan and his father Dominic were watching Matt Rule throughout this whole season to see all of this stuff unfold. Because it's not like, it could not have been that they committed to Georgia and then just decided randomly that Nebraska is going to be the pick. They had to have done some homework on that, right? Now, of course, it helps, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, that, Donovan Raiola, the offensive line coach, is in town, because what better sounding board? But that also, I think, plays into the trust factor. That tells you something. If Donovan Raiola thought that it was not going well with Matt Rule, or that Matt Rule was not who he said he was, and that they weren't on the right path, Dylan Raiola would not be coming here. Like they would not have, he would have just told his nephew, hey, let's do this. And you're coming into a dumpster fire, which is what I think would have been the sell under the previous coaching staff, which is why it would have never happened under the previous coaching staff. But yeah, I think that the trust factor here is huge between Rule and the family and Dylan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the family looked, like you said, they watched Nebraska season play out and they saw maybe they kept an eye on Donovan Raiola's position, the offensive line, and how it improved, and how Nebraska was one of the best rushing teams in the conference, and how Rule may have rewarded Donovan Raiola not for his work on the recruiting trail or because he's Dylan's uncle, but because he's a good offensive line coach. And I think that's something
totally agree.
that's something that Nebraska fans are maybe learning. Where his first year on the job was at 2021, where it wasn't really looking great. But over time, now that Donovan has been there, he has some experience doing it in this room. You can tell that his players absolutely love him, and he's doing good work on the recruiting trail. And I think Matt Rule really likes him. He likes him some Donovan Raiola, and
they just fit well together. They really do.
They're two football guys just talking football. They're two line of scrimmage guys at the end of the day, just talking ball, talking shop. And Matt Rule rewarded Donovan Raiola with an extension with his contract, gave him a bump in salary too. So maybe that had something to do with the Raiolas kind of just like seeing something about Matt Rule that, hey, this guy, he's doing things his way, and he's doing things that we like, and we can see a future playing for this guy. So I think that had something to do with it too. Donovan did, maybe in the way that not everybody kind of
not the low-hanging fruit way that people see it. It's
just
more
like think about it a little bit
it's,
further and go a little bit farther
agreed.
About like the development and what Donovan Raiola currently means to the program right now. I think that had a lot to do with it too.
And you have to, by the way, the on-field portion of that.
Yep.
You can't say that they don't have trust in the guy protecting the quarterback, right?
Yep.
They obviously will have that built in. And I totally agree with you about because the offensive line piece is a key thing in all of this when you talk about the football. I think that group got better. I think they're going to continue to be better next year. And I think that there is like the assumption that they need to go out and get a bunch of dudes in the portal on the offensive line, I think could not be further from the truth. And I don't think that's part of the strategy at all. But I don't want to sidetrack us here on that. We get into a whole different sort of side portal discussion. But back to Dylan. One of the other things that is as the news kind of hits and we're settling into this, it becomes a matter of what then happens because of this, right? So it becomes whenever you get a five-star player, whenever you get a five-star quarterback, you get one that is as popular as he is, as big of a name as he is. It becomes part of do you think that other guys will come because he's then in the mix, right? Like, and I think that there is a chance for that. It's a little bit weird timing just because of where we are in the
timing's
calendar.
Odd. Yep.
Yeah, being in the and that's not a knock on him or anything like that. Just for if you wanted to fully maximize being able to bring additional guys in, Nebraska's up against it numbers wise. Like it's just it's really late to be kind of processing guys and then bringing other guys in. Like it's just a tough situation. So TBD on that. We'll see. I think in my opinion, maybe the biggest short-term impact for that could be like another transfer wide receiver. I think that's where now all of a sudden your situation becomes a lot more attractive, especially if Nebraska, like they've been trying to do for the most part with transfers, which is get multi-year transfers. If you can go to a guy that has 2 or 3 years left, that's a quality wide receiver and say, hey, we want you to come be a part of this. Look who's going to be throwing to you. I think that's something that is really feasible. And you can kind of suss that out over the next little bit of time because we have more time to do that than to sign a high school kid.
That's exactly right. That's where my mind went first. It's okay. So now that Dylan is in, what is next? And what is next, I think, is, like you said, in the transfer portal, especially an older veteran wide receiver who wouldn't mind running some routes and catching some passes from a 5-star quarterback who he obviously has seen and heard about through social media for months now, just because Dylan Raiola is hot in the streets right now. And guys are going to know who he is. Dylan knows a lot of guys too. He's played with a lot of guys 7-on-7 and everything. He comes from a great program. multiple programs over at most recently at Buford, Georgia. There's some players down there, I think, Greg, right?
One or two.
Yeah,
one or two.
Yeah. So, my mind went obviously with the receiver room. Nebraska could really use an injection of a veteran guy who can maybe show the younger guys the ropes, like Malachi Coleman, Jalen Lloyd, Jaden Doss. Those guys need, I think, somebody to maybe help lead them and show them how to be pros. And I think, somebody, maybe we'll see how this plays out, but I think that's the top priority for me right now is getting Dylan Raiola as a peer recruiter and seeing what he can kind of get himself through the transfer portal as a receiver.
Yeah, and I guess the final note that I definitely want to hit on, and this is probably now as we get through the excitement of the recruitment, this is what people will start to dig into. Dylan Raiola, the actual football player, right? I have said this to you, and I've said this to other people. I think that the hysteria of his recruitment has somehow overshadowed just how good he is. And I think that when the hysteria around the recruitment is totally justified, because to me, he is an outstanding prospect. I know that you watched his film. So what are your thoughts on what you saw when you popped on that senior film?
Yeah. So 3-year starter overall. And what I like most is like, he's accurate. He's completing passes. He's a career 64% quarterback, which is really good. He's limited the mistakes, which is really good. He's thrown 88 career touchdown passes, 11 interceptions. His senior year at Buford, 63% completion percentage for a little under 3,000 yards, 34 touchdowns, just one interception. It's kind of silly when you read it. 34 touchdowns, one interception.
Especially if you know that offensive line was bad. I want to put that out there. He was running for his life. So yes, that also, you get brownie points for that.
And running for his life. We'll touch on that a little bit later. But the frame, I love the frame too. 6'3". He's like a legit 220, 225 around there. So I mean, that obviously he'll still need to develop. He's only a true freshman. That's one thing that we'll touch on as well. But like, you can't turn on the film and not just like get excited about the arm strength.
Yep.
Massive arm. That ball, I mean, he's launching deep routes off play action fakes, and the ball is going down the field like 55,
and it looks effortless.
Air yards.
It looks effortless too.
It is just like a flick of the wrist, and that thing looks like a video game where the ball is just going. So, that kind of brings me to my next point of, he looks so good and can be so dangerous as a play action, like off play action, that like, it just tells me it's going to be really important for Nebraska's offense, for Marcus Satterfield, who's coming back as the OC, to really kind of develop a traditional handoff run game with the offensive line and the running back to, just give the threat of it there for defenses who maybe start creeping up towards the line of scrimmage and putting more guys in the box. And that's where, Dylan Raiola can really win, is with play action, deep bombs down the field, stretching a defense. But for that to happen, you need a reliable and steady, consistent run game with the running back, because look, for as talented as Dylan Raiola is, for as huge as his right arm is, he's not, I don't want to call him not mobile, because he can move around well.
Yeah, he's athletic enough.
He's mobile enough to extend plays, but he's looking to throw the ball down the field when he's extending plays on the run. He's obviously a really good thrower on the run as well. But you're not going to be like dialing up, I don't think, like 10 quarterback designed runs for Dylan Raiola. No. You're not going to be calling like a QB power for Dylan Raiola, in my opinion. So, that's going to be a different thing for Husker fans to maybe get used to with the offense. And maybe it's a welcome change, because Husker fans know, name off a Husker quarterback in the recent years, and he's probably missing games because he's been hurt, because he runs the ball so much. So I think that's the next step with the Huskers offense, is what it's going to look like. I think it's going to be a lot of play action. I think there's going to be fewer design quarterback runs. And I think there's going to be a lot of deep shots. I mean, Dylan Raiola, that right arm, it is huge. So, it's not going to be, I don't think he's going to like win the Heisman Trophy his first year here, but like, because he's a true freshman still, there's going to be development. There's going to be
there's going to be bumps in the road. Just prepare yourself for that. It helps for everybody.
Sure. But what more can you say? But this is a huge win for Nebraska, for Matt Rule. Exciting day to be a Husker fan.
Yeah, and I think that I smiled when he talked about the deep shots because this is what's good about what they already have in place in Lincoln, right? Is that I
Yep.
can picture exactly what that can look like
Mm-hmm.
because I see a play action pass and I see either Jalen Lloyd or Malachi Coleman getting deep and beating a defense over the top, especially as teams adjust because I think there's going to be opportunity to do that early because teams are still going to play them like they did last year where they load up the box and try to take away that run. They're not going to necessarily respect it. And we're going all the way to the fall here, but that's just where my brain goes. And so just thinking about kind of the chess match there, I think those opportunities are going to be there. Now, teams are going to be a little bit more on alert for those
Yep.
guys and all that speed. But then that's where you start to work that underneath stuff, right? Where you also
Mm-hmm.
then have Thomas Fidone underneath. If you go, 3 wide, you've got Jaden Doss, or if you've got another transfer in there or what have you. The other part of this is that if you're upgrading the quarterback talent and the processing ability, you also have kind of those dump off passes and all of that now then become a situation that's open and
Mm-hmm.
available to you. A lot of things like instantly, I think, get better when you like get a quarterback of this caliber in again. I'm with you. Like, we're not setting the expectations at Heisman in year one. I think that that's
Yeah.
crazy. But I do think that and I guess this is where we can go here next because I do think this is important. Expectations for year one, assuming that he's the starter, is it just be better than what they had last year? Or is the bar have to be higher than that for you for year one?
So I'm someone that, when I look at this program right now, you look at the defense, right? And the defense has a lot of dudes coming back, a lot of
Yeah,
guys
they're
with
going to be
starting
a
experience.
yeah,
Ty Robinson, Nash
yeah,
Hutmacher, Jamari Butler, Cam Lenhart, Principal Uman Mielen, all those guys as of today are set to come back. And that's just the defensive front.
right.
Linebacker, there's a little bit of holes there.
And I
Jaden
think they
Wright comes
still
back.
could. I,
Yeah, and
I think
it's early, like
linebacker's
I
another
said
spot
today.
where we could be looking. Yeah, as
Yeah,
of when we're
absolutely.
recording this. Yeah,
For sure. And then you look at the back end of the defense, there's some talent there too. So Nebraska is going to have a really good defense again in 2024 as of right now. If everybody slated to come back actually comes back. So that's a good thing for a freshman quarterback is to
excellent
be
thing.
able
Yeah.
to lean on a defense where if it doesn't work out right away, maybe you go 3 and out. You have your defense out there and you have the ball back in 4 more plays because they're
Yep.
3 and out.
There's nothing. You
Yeah,
should never have to force anything because
for sure.
that defense is going to hold you down. Yeah.
For sure. And so, when I look at last year, and it's funny, Greg, when you bring up like the deep ball shots, that gets me really excited because remember last year, like whether it was Jeff Sims, Heinrich Harburg, or Chuba Purdy, there were opportunities down the field to
Yep.
hit even more big plays than they
Absolutely.
did. Like for as much as Marcus Satterfield for the fan base kind of is not totally on board with him, you can't deny that there were some open receivers running free down the field in 2023, and Nebraska just did not have the quarterback play to hit them or see them.
See them.
So
Yeah.
that is the benefit of having a true quarterback, Dylan Raiola, who has been in a football locker room his entire life. He's been mentored by guys like Matthew Stafford, right? Because of his dad's connection with the Detroit Lions. Like you are getting a true quarterback, somebody who was born to play the position at Nebraska. So in theory, you'd think that Dylan Raiola would see those routes down the field. And he had, like we've talked about the arm strength, he has plenty of arm strength to get the ball there and lead these guys to big plays down the field. So, then my next question is, can he do that right away as a 19-year-old true freshman in 2024 right. against Big Ten defenses? That seems like a lot, but guys have done it before. And 6 wins is the mark to get to a bowl. I think if you get to a bowl game still, I mean, that's just, people want to talk about, 12 team playoff, whatever. That's way down the line in my opinion.
Yeah, that's down the line. That's
just
his junior
6
year.
Wins. Just get baby steps, get there, just get to a bowl game. You're going to have a defense good enough to get to a bowl game. And I don't want to say unfortunately, but unfortunately, Dylan is going to have a lot of weight of expectations on his shoulders. And did he create some of it by how he's operated his own recruiting? Maybe, but it wasn't just him. I mean, he's got family on his corner, helping him along with this thing with the Ohio State, the Georgia thing, and now Nebraska. There's been a lot of hopping around, but if you look at other past 5-star quarterbacks, those guys tend to hop around.
That happens. Yeah, I think that happens more than people realize. I mean,
yeah,
Adrian Martinez had 3 different commitments in his time. You know, I think Taylor Martinez had a couple. Like, this has happened before. I think that people it's a recency bias kind of thing. But I'm with you there.
For sure. But yeah, when you're talking about, expectations, I think 6 wins, a bowl game, that would be incredible for this program.
And solid play.
To have a true freshman hop in right away and like lead the team there, behind a really good defense in 2024. I think that's what you're looking at.
God, I think that defense point is really smart. I think that is because for all the expectations and pressure that will come on him from the outside during this offseason, and it's going to build, the thing that he will be able to turn and lean on is that defense. And what they can say to him, and I think this is really realistic, and I think it will happen, is listen, you see those guys on the black shirts, they're the truth. If you go out there and at this point manage the game, like, we don't have to have you be what we think you're going to be your junior or senior year right now. You can still learn and develop, because we saw the defense keep them in it when you had bad quarterback play. So if you're just solid while we continue to layer on and build, then we really got something here. That's what the coaching staff would say. And I think that's very fair. And I think that's something that it's easy for you to kind of wrap your brain around. It's easy for you to build an identity around that. When you're kind of going, those guys are big on their identity and sayings and all of that.
Yeah.
You can just see the storyline building for itself. The way to take pressure off of the 5-star is the quarterback is to have that defense and Ty Robinson and Isaac Gifford and Nash Hutmacher and Marquise Buford, all those veteran guys are the ones that are going to help him along to build the foundation of what's happening. And I think that's not crazy or anything unrealistic that you could see unfolded.
And another thing, leaning on the defense, another good thing for a true freshman 19-year-old quarterback that's going to be leading you into the season is, I think if you would catch Matt Rule behind the scenes, be a fly in the wall, he'd be telling his offensive line, like, hey, look, we got a kid coming in here and he's going to be starting for us. That's going to put a lot of, I think, good pressure and kind of like maybe the leadership stuff with the offensive line that's coming back. So you got Teddy Prohaska at left tackle. You have Bryce Benhart at right tackle coming back.
It's huge. Now that's even bigger.
You have your starting center, the quarterback.
Oh, that's also huge.
Ben Scott coming back. Now there's holes to be filled with the guard spot. Maybe Turner Corcoran comes back. Maybe he bumps down to left guard, which I think would be good for his best spot. Finally get him off of that tackle. It's not working. Let's get him at the left guard spot. Maybe find a right tackle. That is a veteran offensive line that can protect the quarterback. They did a better job of that. They did under Donovan Raiola, Dylan's uncle. They've steadily improved, like we talked about before. And if they could just get the traditional run game going, and there's going to be some questions to answer there with like who's going to be running the ball. What is the status, the physical status of Gabe Ervin Jr., of Ramir Johnson? Are they coming back? If they do, what kind of shape are they going to be in after a dislocated hip and then dislocated shoulder for Ramir? You would like to see a big emphasis on getting that traditional handoff run game going to help out a young quarterback, because you already got a defense that's going to help out a young quarterback, in my opinion. So
and a veteran offensive line.
I think Matt Rule talking to those offensive linemen, I think they're going to take it upon themselves to be mentors themselves and protect this young kid that's going to be leading them to the season. I really think that.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. I think a good one to end on. That is. I think there are built-in things to where he doesn't have to carry the whole thing himself, which you would not necessarily know just looking at the team's record. You wouldn't get that, but being inside of it, you totally see how this kind of sets up for them to like kind of throw their arms around him and help him to grow steadily versus throwing everything at him right away. And I think that's going to be important, as the outside will just rain pressure down on him to be the man right away. I think internally they have a lot of safeguards there to help that out.
And one more thing before we get out of there about the expectations thing, that's the benefit with Dylan Raiola, where he has been around football his entire life. He's been in locker rooms. He's going to already be seasoned in how to deal with all of the expectations, because just his recruitment alone, about everybody wondering where he's going to end up. He's had years of doing this already, of handling expectations, handling media appearances, handling everything. So I think that's just another benefit of bringing in a 5-star quarterback like Dylan Raiola, is he's going to be more mature in like a way that a quarterback leader of a program should be, at this age than other kids his age. So I think, this is just obviously a home run for Nebraska in every manner.
In every sense. You're pro, we see it in the NFL, we see it in college football. You nail quarterback, you get a big time quarterback like this and it works out, it changes the entire trajectory of the program. That's what we're talking about here, plain and simple. But that's going to do it for us. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can get these videos directly into your feed. We have got plenty of coverage over at Inside Nebraska, wall-to-wall coverage of all things Dylan Raiola, and the commitment that has happened here for Nebraska and how big it is. It's kind of the talk of college football right now. Who would have thought that heading into the early signing period that Nebraska would be stealing these headlines and would be one of the talks of college football? But here we are. It is definitely a big time for Nebraska, and we will catch you guys later.